Hey Carp Geeks, something a little different. I'm actually in my kitchen and I'm going to show you today how I make my homemade ground bait. Now if you're in the UK, this is kind of something a little alien because you're very used to just popping down to the local tackle store and picking up a bag of ground bait, whatever it is. But as you may know, I've been living in the United States for quite a while now, since 1994. And ground bait isn't available here, so we have to make our own. Now, back in the day when I started fishing, probably around the year 2003 over here in the United States, most people were just using this, okay, which was just white breadcrumb, which, you know, if you did fish back in the day, we used to mix white and brown crumb, or wheat crumb as we call it here in the States, to make a ground bait of the correct consistency. White crumb itself, of course, is super binding, where wheat crumb, brown crumb, isn't, so the correct combination of the two will give you the ground bait you wanted. So, you know, I wasn't really happy with the standard answer when I got here. So I actually went about making my own recipe, okay? Now, in true YouTube fashion, there it is, right? Okay, so here's a recipe I've kind of finalized over many years of refining, okay? And it's available with the ingredients you see, or it can be made with the ingredients you see here on the table, okay? Each ingredient's there for a reason. Because of either flavor or binding characteristics or something else, okay? The only other thing you need would be a good old food processor, and that's all. So food, you know, this is a $20 food processor from, I think it was Kmart at the time, okay, which I use. You know, I'm not allowed to use the the official family food processor for bait, so there's my cheaper one, okay? So let's talk about how I make it. So the base, of course, is white crumb, okay, and it's just straight out of the container, 5 parts by volume white crumb, okay? So a little bit under half actually is white crumb. And then, you know, that forms like the bulk material, okay? So the bulk of the ground bait is bulked out by white crumb because it gives it a good kind of firm consistency, okay? The next one, now it's important, okay, because I'm in the United States and we don't really have the fish meal craze in terms of ground baits and boilies and things like that. It's like fishing in the 80s where the fish is still interested in kind of sweet flavors. So what I use for the sweet component, which is non-binding, so if you like, it's like a sweet wheat or brown crumb, is what we call here in the United States honey graham crackers. And they're a lot like rich tea biscuits. So a good approximation in the UK would be a rich tea biscuit. It's basically a biscuit or a cookie, or in this case, a cracker, that's actually pretty hard, but crumbles up to make a nice crumb, okay? So I'm not going to open this packet, but this is what they look like, okay? Maybe I'll open them up. There we go. Okay, so that's a graham cracker. It's kind of firm, but it does crumble down a lot like a rich tea biscuit, but it does have a honey flavor and it is very sweet, okay? So it's actually great, okay? So it's non-binding, sweet, very good. Okay, so that goes in, and that goes in a 6 ratio, right? So far we've had 5 measures. It's all by volume, so whatever kind of cup or container you want to use, right? It's all relative. So 5 scoops of white crumb, 6 scoops of graham cracker or ground up cookies. Vanilla wafers also work quite well, but I find, you know, they're less bang for the buck because they're kind of very airy and they don't, you know, when you grind them up, they don't grind down too much. So the graham crackers have to be ground down in this guy right here, okay? Now what I like to do, I grind them down, I grind some coarse and some fine, so I actually have a mixture of particle sizes, okay? And, you know, when I mix the ground bait kind of light, that means I get kind of the fluttering or the dancing particles, yeah? But if I mix it wet, it's just like a piece of food in there. It increases the food content. Okay, so 5 white crumb, 6, let's just call them ground cookies, all right? Then, now, interestingly, I like to use super fine sugar as a binder, okay? So confectioner sugar here in the US or caster sugar in the UK. You can substitute ground molasses, which I often do just to give it kind of a nice browner color and a nice texture and taste. But, you know, that involves a little bit more work with a coffee grinder. So for the basic recipe, straight off the shelf, caster sugar or powdered sugar, confectioner sugar. And that goes in just a 1 ratio, right? So just to recap, 5 white crumb, 6 ground cookies, 1 measure of sugar. Now the sugar, because it's super fine, will dissolve super easily, which is what you want, yeah? So when the ground bait is actually dry, it doesn't really dissolve, right? So it's nice and crumbly and fine. But when it gets wet, it activates the sugar and it actually helps bind. So sugar is very important if you want a nice method mix, okay? So that really comes into its own when you want to mix this a little wetter for a method mix, which I really like to do sometimes. Okay, so that's the bulk ingredients, okay? Then we have the special ingredients, okay? So if we look at the front here, salt and pepper. We put salt and pepper on our food, right, just to season it. Same thing with ground bait. So I like to put, this is a combination of about half a measure, right? So salt, essential, okay? And you can use black pepper, but I prefer to use paprika. Paprika, of course, is the primary ingredient in red robin. For those who know what red robin is, it's a very effective carp bait additive. Red robin is essentially 90% paprika, right, or more. All right, so poor man's red robin is paprika. Put that in and salt in a similar ratio, maybe half a cup total, okay? Then, secret ingredient, okay? Secret ingredient is, of course, my pride and joy, the impulse feeding stimulant. Now, the impulse feeding stimulant, it's 30 milliliters per kilo, okay? So I think I've shown this in a few videos before, but you basically keep this one tight, this one loose, give it a squeeze, it'll fill the dosing container to the line. If you're in the US, the dosing container is 15 milliliters, so 2 of those. If you're in the UK, it's 10, so 3 of those, okay? Just put that into the first little bit of water you mix with your ground bait, get it in there, and then, you know, use more water to make it the consistency you want. Okay, so that's my ground bait. Pretty simple. Any questions? In the comments, I'll get back to you. Okay, see you next time.